The terminal was quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists before the sun really shows up, when the world still belongs to shadows and sighs. Inside Gate 37, a man sat alone. He didn't look special, no gold watch, no bodyguards, no briefcase stuffed with secrets, just a man in a hoodie, waiting. But this man, he was not just another traveler. He was the President of Burkina Faso, and no one had any idea. The early morning chill had settled deep inside the airport walls. Lights buzzed softly. A janitor pushed a mop across the polished floor, humming something that only made sense at 5 a.m. And there, among sleepy tourists and half-awake business people, sat a man with the weight of a nation on his shoulders, but not a trace of it on his face. Ibrahim Traore. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. Wearing a plain, dark hoodie, he sipped tea and scrolled quietly on his phone. No press, no cameras, no suit screaming power. Just a return flight home after intense diplomatic talks in Europe. Conversations about gold, sovereignty, and Africa's shifting future. But for now, all he wanted was to breathe, fly home, and disappear into his people once more. Gate 37. Air France to Ouagadougou. Bonjour, ça va? He said warmly to a cleaning lady as he stood up. She smiled back, a little surprised by the stranger's kind tone. She didn't know who he was, and that's exactly how he liked it. He moved with intention, but without force, with presence, but without noise. He passed through the boarding gate without raising an eyebrow, handed over his boarding pass, nodded to the flight crew, and took his seat. Row 2A, business class, window, and that should have been that. But behind him, something was already brewing. Rows back, another man was arriving. This one did wear power on his sleeve. Expensive cologne, polished shoes that clicked like they demanded attention, a sharp navy suit with a pin that screamed, corporate elite. He was the CEO of a major French energy firm, and he was not happy. He had expected first-class treatment, VIP everything. But when he reached the gate, the news was cold. I'm sorry, monsieur. Business class is full. That was unacceptable. He didn't do full. He didn't do no. To him, rules were for other people. I am a strategic partner in multiple African development projects, he barked, loud enough to make sure the staff and half the terminal heard it. His voice was polished but cold. His arrogance, radiant. The gate agents fumbled through their tablets, stalling, sweating. They didn't want to say it again, but the truth was firm. All business class seats were taken. Still, he refused to let go. That's when they called her, a senior flight attendant, mid-40s, crisp Air France uniform, blonde bun tied tight, eyes sharp enough to cut through pretense. Her name was Claire. She boarded the aircraft like it was a mission, and make no mistake, it was. Inside the cabin, Claire scanned business class like a hawk. Every face, every seat. Then her gaze froze. Seat 2A, a man, hoodie, dark skin, no assistant, no visible status. She tilted her head slightly, then leaned toward her colleague and whispered, probably a mistake. She walked over, all smiles, the fake kind. Bonjour, monsieur. May I see your boarding pass? Traoré looked up, calm, collected. He handed it to her. She glanced at it, then at him. Seat 2A, business class. Correct, but her eyes narrowed. He didn't fit her image of someone who belonged there. A moment later, she returned. Smile still there, but now tighter. Less customer service, more corporate cold. Sir, she said politely, we may need to move you to accommodate another passenger. Would you mind relocating to economy? You will, of course, be compensated. It was like being stabbed with a feather, soft, quiet, and meant to look harmless. But it wasn't. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. His voice didn't rise. And why me? No reason, sir, she replied, trying to hold the smile. Just a small adjustment for our guest." "A guest more important than me?" Her lips twitched, but she didn't answer. Other passengers began to notice. A woman stopped typing. A man folded his newspaper. They could feel the shift like air pressure before a storm. Still, no one said a word. And Ibrahim? He just leaned back and said softly, "No, I will remain in my seat." Claire froze. That no shook her more than she'd admit. Not because it was loud, it wasn't, but because it came from a place she didn't understand. A kind of quiet strength. The kind that doesn't shout, but stays. "Sir, I insist," she said, her tone losing its sugar. "This is for operational reasons." He didn't flinch. "If it's operational," he replied, eyes locked on hers, "why am I being asked and not anyone else?" She blinked. She wasn't ready for that kind of question or that kind of stare. Around them, more eyes turned. Passengers watching, feeling something unjust, but still silent. Claire turned, frustrated, and walked briskly toward the cockpit. Minutes later, she returned. And this time, she didn't even approach Ibrahim. She targeted another black man in business class, then another. "Excuse me, sir, we'll need to relocate you to economy," she said to a young man, maybe 28, soft-spoken, eyes confused. "Why?" he asked. She didn't answer, just took his boarding pass. And that's when Ibrahim Traore stood up. "Enough," he said, his voice still calm but heavy now, dense with authority. "You're making decisions based on skin, not tickets. That's discrimination." Claire flinched. She tried to reassert control. "Sir, please sit down. Don't cause a scene." But this time her voice lacked conviction, because when he looked into her eyes, she felt it. Not anger, not rage, power, the kind that doesn't need to shout, the kind that simply is, and she still didn't know who she was dealing with. To her, he was still just another passenger refusing to play his role. She stormed off, muttering under her breath in French, always making noise. She couldn't hear the irony in her own words, but the flight wasn't over yet, not even close. And neither was the storm. The cabin was frozen in silence, thick, breathless, unreal silence. As Ibrahim Traoré stepped out of the aircraft, the dry heat of Burkina Faso wrapped around him like a welcome home. But this wasn't just a return, it was a revelation. The quiet man in seat 2A, the one they ignored, questioned and disrespected, had just become the lesson of the century. Not just for Claire, not just for the French CEO, but for the entire world watching. Outside, the sun poured gold over the tarmac. The line of black vehicles shimmered like polished obsidian under its rays. Military boots hit concrete in perfect rhythm. Every camera flashed, every face turned, not toward luxury or ego, but toward humility, dignity, power that doesn't shout but stands still. And Ibrahim, he didn't raise his arms, he didn't wave, he simply walked, slow, calm, with the quiet command of a man who never needed to prove who he was, because his truth was undeniable. Inside the aircraft, Claire was still shaking. Her uniform felt tighter. Her polished shoes couldn't help her now. The CEO tried to straighten his tie, but his throat was dry. This is crazy," he mumbled, lips barely moving. He didn't look like, and that was it. That sentence, that excuse, that lie we tell ourselves to justify what we don't understand, what we refuse to respect. A steward on the flight who had quietly observed everything now looked directly at Claire, not with judgment, not with pity, just a heavy, quiet disappointment. And that silence cut deeper than 1,000 angry words. The French CEO's assistants tried to speak up. One began, "There must be a misunderstanding, our client." But the officer's hand lifted, firm and final. "Enough," he said. "You all saw. The world saw." Because by now, the video was already going viral. The nurse who had whispered the truth, she'd sent it to her cousin, who sent it to a journalist, who tweeted it, who posted it, who captioned it. "This is our president," and they tried to move him to economy. Within minutes, it was trending in France, in Africa, globally. The comments exploded. That flight attendant should be fired. This is why power doesn't always wear a suit. Ibrahim Traoré, remember the name. Back at the airport, the presidential convoy rolled out, calm and controlled. No horns, no flashing lights, just presence, the kind that moves mountains without raising its voice. And inside that convoy, Ibrahim sat in the back seat of a black SUV. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't demand an apology. He just stared out the window, still quiet, still dignified, still a leader. And as they drove away from the airport, as the dust settled behind them, one final thought echoed louder than any announcement from a cockpit. Never underestimate quiet power. It sees you, it hears you, and when the time is right, it changes everything. But what happened next was even more shocking. When Claire and the CEO arrived at the airport security office, what they saw on the television screens made their knees buckle. Because the real fallout hadn't even started yet. Their names were about to become headlines, and Ibrahim Traoré, he wasn't done teaching the world a lesson. Want to see how the tables truly turned?